Section 12 on comparative longevity in man and the lower animals. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Olga Geiling. On comparative longevity in man and the lower animals by E. Ray Lankester. Other relations of longevity. There seem to be some minor modifications of the terms evolution and expenditure, which affect longevity and which do not strike us at once as coming under those heads, and yet are very plainly influential in the result. How difficult it is to get clear views in the intricacies of such a problem as the one before us, we may let Mr. Spencer say, who shows, in his chapter on the inductive verification of the laws of multiplication, the frequency of complications which can only be dealt with by the use of the phrase ceteris paribus as a continual qualification. Animals which feed on large masses of food, of great concentration, as e.g. other animals or special fruits and portions of trees, are longer lived than those feeding on diffused and widely spread food, as the lower sorts of vegetable growth and decaying material. This we see in the greater length of life of carnivorous and frugivorous animals as compared, ceteris paribus, with herbivorous and garbage eaters. This reduces itself to a case of evolution and bulk, for in the first group it is an advantage to be large and highly endowed, to be swift and powerful, and to secure the whole mass by one effort. In the second group, 5 mouths will take in more nutriment than one, it being equally diffused, and hence it is better for a given bulk of the species to be divided into 5 small individuals than retained in one large one. Where the acquisitive power increases more nearly with the bulk, as in vegetals, such a distinction does not hold. It is in accordance with this relation of bulk to food that insects which feed on widely spread vegetable juices or similarly widespread garbage are shorter lived than the birds which prey on the insects, or that other insects which are carnivorous, and that the lower animals, generally feeding as they do on diffused food, are shorter lived. Thus the frugivorous apes are longer lived than other animals similar to them in many other matters, which are not fruit eaters. Carnivora generally than herbivora, in the various classes and orders, ceteris paribus. Another apparently important influence in longevity is what Mr. Spencer calls tertiary aggregation. This is obviously only a form of increased evolution. Mr. Spencer supposes that what has been somewhat unaccountably called vegetative repetition, for it is quite as truly animal or animative repetition, is an arrested production of zooids by budding, that it is, in fact, a merging of many individualities in one. This we see in many cases, like being compared with like, is accompanied by increased longevity. The Taenia, which exhibits this tertiary aggregation in a loose sort of way, continues to develop from the attached head, and to protract its individual duration of life long after sexual organs have ripened and death followed in the separated proglottides. In the closely allied trematodes, flukes, in which the individuality is that of a secondary aggregate, death follows reproduction, as also in the nematodes, which live in similar conditions and are structurally allied to other parasitic worms. In vegetals, we find the same relation holding good, the multiaxial plants being the long-lived, the uniaxial, the short-lived. That tertiary aggregation only has this accompaniment as long as it implies an increased comparative evolution is seen in the fact that the mollusca and vertebrata, supposed to be secondary aggregates, footnote, that is, aggregates compounded of primary aggregates being simply cells, end of footnote, are longer lived than many tertiary aggregates, whilst similarly the relation of expenditure to longevity considerably qualifies the influence of tertiary aggregation. The annelids of high tertiary aggregation, i.e. of many segments, e.g. lumbricus and marine forms, are much longer lived than the naiads and catogaster, with few segments and 1 year of life. Footnote: naiads and catogaster are continually giving rise to new segments, which separate and become new individuals. How long the life of one original ancestor may be thus carried on by means of division is not known, but it is probably not for the immense periods supposed by some writers, for when sexual organs develop, the worm ceases to bud and dies. End of footnote. So, too, the echinoderms are tertiary aggregates, and consequently have long life as compared with simple vermis. Tertiary aggregation acts in aiding longevity like the construction in 5 compartments of the Great Eastern Steamship. If one is injured and lost, the others can go on without it, or even one may survive by itself. The question of tertiary aggregation brings us very near again to the discussion of individuality, which is not within our scope. Remembering what was said at the outset as to this, it is clear that tertiary aggregation acts by merging many individualities into one, and thus improving the chance of continued life. Social organization is a sort of tertiary aggregation, in that newly produced individuals do not separate from, but remain attached to the preceding generation, supporting and ministering to the life of the older constituents. Thus it is with civilized man. He is supported in old age by the younger generations, the hope of and confidence in such support which the younger individuals have, being the strongest bond of society. Mere size acts in plants and animals both, in rendering them less susceptible to the cold of the wet season or the winter, and thus protracts life. The production of woody fiber in plants is a condition of longevity, and anything directly favoring this may extend life. It enables the plant to resist breakage by wind or other violence, and protects it from cold. Thus, bulbs continue the individual life of an annual flower for many years, and thus the trunks and branches of trees and shrubs live, whilst the leaves and flowers die. Footnote: some persons would wish to regard tree stems, bulbs, etc., as a kind of asexual reproductive mass, and would look upon the flowers of each year as successive generations of individuals. The compound nature of perennial plants is one of the difficulties met with in attempting to define individuality. End of footnote. Obviously, the influence on age of the development of wood is but a part of the law of relation of evolution and longevity, but it is a special correlation of very wide application. End of section 12.